the question, what is wealth, is one which people will answer very differently. If you ask somebody, a person who hasn't studied economics, they'll say, well, wealth is money. It's how rich you are. Economists define wealth as something that you have that contributes to your well-being, that contributes to the services which make up your life, whether that be food or housing or your health, or it's a stock of something. It's something which you can, that you have at a particular time that's making your life be okay. Now, of course, in the modern economy, wealth includes owning factories and fields and owning your home. That's a form of your wealth. It provides your housing services. But in the last half century, economists have also taken on board the idea that education is also part of your wealth. Your ability to function in a modern, demanding environment, a knowledge-intensive environment, that's also your wealth, because that gives you the ability to claim a high income or a decent income. So your education is also part of your wealth. In a modern economy, who you know is part of your wealth. If you're well connected in a network, then you can make a lot of good deals and you can easily find work and so on. So economists have now expanded the idea of wealth so that it's not just factories and fields and so on. It's now anything that contributes to your livelihood. Now, when we go back in history, we see, of course, other societies have had rather different compositions of wealth. The hunters and the gatherers, their wealth was in their networks. Of course, they had to share and they had to communicate with each other in hunting and in dividing up the food after the hunt. They had their bodies, their strength, their capacities to hunt. Really, you know, the hunting and gathering economy was kind of a knowledge-based economy, knowledge and strength. They didn't have much in the way of material wealth. They had a few weapons, and because they moved around, they didn't have a lot of material wealth. Then we proceeded through a series of stages in which we got agricultural commodities and land and cattle and stores of grain and so on. And then on up to plantations, and then at one point slaves were part of the wealth of the other human beings who were the owners of the slaves. But it's interesting to speculate. Now we're in a modern economy in which both material wealth, factories and fields, and education or human capital are important. And where are we going? I think we're going to an economy in which material wealth becomes relatively unimportant. Think about it. The material wealth that you need in order to, for example, be a good software engineer is not much. You need a desk and a decent computer. The amount of wealth that you need to engage in many activities in which people are engaged in a modern economy is you need to have skills, but you don't need $250,000 worth of equipment like some giant drill presses and production lines. If you consider the activities that most human beings are engaged in today, we don't use a lot of material wealth. We use a lot of skills. We use networks. We use our abilities. Of course, we use our time. Now, this is a very interesting speculation. If we're moving to an economy in which human skills and networks are really what matter, and material wealth is less important, then we're moving to an economy which could be more equal. Because it's very easy to pass on the plantation to your son, or to pass on the mansion to your daughter. It's much, much harder to pass on your skills and your networks to your kids. Most people fail to do that, while quite successfully passing on their cars and their houses and their material wealth. So as we move to a society, which I'm convinced we're doing, in which the material wealth occupies a smaller and smaller role, I suspect that the ability of the relatively privileged families to cast their privileges onto their kids will be limited. And this will, of course, mean it's a better chance for everybody. It means there'll be more randomness in who gets ahead. Maybe the luck of the genetic draw, maybe the luck of a marriage, maybe the luck of your networks, or maybe your skills. Those are all things which in which people are more likely to be able to play the game no matter what their circumstances are. So I'm quite optimistic about the distant future. However, I have to come back to the fact that I'm an American and I'm resident in Italy a good part of the time. And in those two countries, I don't see the first signs of this more egalitarian future happening yet, but I'm convinced that they will.